Welcome back to Dark Corner's Horror Smackdown. We love all these films, but not everyone does. So in round 3, we're playing Devil's Advocate. Views expressed here do not necessarily reflect those of Dark Corners or its affiliates.
Match 51, The Birds versus The Wicker Man.
Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds has proved one of the most difficult films on which to play Devil's Advocate, and yet it has always been a divisive film.
It's the end of the world!
On its release, while it was feted in Europe, critics in the US detested it, and it still has its detractors today, mostly for the same reason. Too much suspense. The first bird attack happens 25 minutes in, but you could hardly call that horror. It's a massive 50 minutes before a proper attack. In the meantime, we have some typical Hitchcockian humour, colourful locals.
Harry, what's the little Brenner girl's name?
Lois?
Alice, ain't it?
No, it's Lois.
It's Alice.
A love triangle.
Is that where you met Mitch?
Girl talk over sherry.
Annie, there's nothing between Mr. Brenner and me.
All played out against the backdrop of a needlessly elaborate practical joke perpetrated by a spoilt little rich girl that has no bearing on the bird attacks. Depending on your point of view and how you take to the characters, you're either on tenterhooks waiting for something to happen, or you're just waiting for something to happen.
Oh, I see.
But even when the attacks start, the question remains: has the master of suspense gone too far? Hitchcock built a career on building up suspense and then cathartically releasing it. The Birds builds up suspense through sound, and through silence. Through subtle hints.
The chicken feed. Well, it's just no good. The chickens won't eat it. They're always hungry.
And explicit foreshadowing. But the resulting tension is never released. Another director would have ended with the explosive sequence in the centre of Bodega Bay. But Hitchcock continues for another 40 minutes to reach the film's muted and inconclusive conclusion. There's no catharsis here, neither triumph nor failure, and our central character, the vivacious Melanie Daniels, is reduced to barely speaking.
No. No.
Scarred by trauma. The film builds its questions. Why do the birds attack? Why sometimes do they not attack? Will the humans win? Will Melanie and Mitch get together? You sat through 2 hours of suspense building to get an answer to these questions, and not one is answered. This is the Horror Smackdown, so one question we should really be asking is this really a horror film?
Here's your sweet for being a brave girl. Come on, which one would you like?
Number 2 seed Silence of the Lambs was struck out in the first round because people did not consider it horror enough, and yet here we have The Wicker Man, a film that really doesn't show any horror until the final scene.
Oh, God! Oh, Jesus Christ!
Up until that point, this is a detective mystery story on an island of religious weirdos. A stroll through the garden with the chief villain,
The reverence, the music.
disapproval of religious practices,
He brought you up to be a pagan.
and fancy dress does not a horror make. Then there are the musical numbers. So many musical numbers. This is no horror film, it's a damn musical. But there are not just genre issues with The Wicker Man. Others have criticised it for being boring as Sergeant Howie tries to unravel the mystery of the missing girl.
I have a photograph here, which I would like you to pass around amongst yourselves.
Gradually he puts all the pieces together and concludes she is not missing. Instead, she is to be used as a sacrifice to please the gods. But, in a shocking twist, it is he who is to be the sacrifice.
You, Sergeant, are the right kind of adult.
Did that really need over an hour of build-up? And why is Sergeant Howie so ideal?
A man who would come here of his own free will. A man who has come here with the power of a king by representing the law. A man who would come here as a virgin. A man who has come here as a fool.
So he's a virgin, a lawman, a fool, and what was the other one?
A man who would come here of his own free will.
Didn't Sergeant Howie try to leave the island?
We'll be back shortly with some more police officers.
And here lies a plot hole that only came to light when director Robin Hardy, along with actors Christopher Lee and Edward Woodward, sat down with Mark Kermode to record the DVD commentary track.
It's always been a source of some concern to me that the plane not working. Are we to assume that the plane has been sabotaged, or are we to assume that somehow the gods have just prevented him from leaving?
Sabotaged, that's my feeling.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Yes,
because after all, if it'd just been the gods, there wouldn't have been all those people waiting behind the wall to see what happened.
The only thing is that if they actually sabotage the plane, it's the only element of it not being entirely his own doing that he's in the place. It's the only place in which they actually conspire to stop him from leaving.
But ignoring that, even how Sergeant Howie ended up on the cliffs was hardly free will. The girl he was trying to save led him there.
Did I do it right?
You did it beautifully!
If this spot was so significant, one of the villagers could have just mentioned that they saw the girl wandering around on the cliff top, and we could have got this whole thing wrapped up in 5 minutes.
Of course!
Let us know what you think of these criticisms. Are they fair? Did we miss anything out? Most importantly, let us know which films should move on into the next round.